Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are recording.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Good evening, folks. I'll now call the regular council meeting of Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022 to order. The meeting is now open to statements no more than 5 members of the public of no more than 2 minutes in length each. Are there any takers? How about me again? Sorry. Okay, we'll move on to item 3.1. Any late additions or deletions for the agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, somebody please move that the May 3rd, 2022 regular council meeting agenda be adopted. Councillor Howe, second Councillor Leach. Any errors or omissions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Move to item 7, business arising from the minutes. 7.1, vote launch policy revised.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After the last council meeting where vote launch policy RC.02C was adopted, council also directed staff to bring it back to council for further discussion, specifically over the inclusion or removal of section 4.3. Section 4.3 is COVID-19 requirements, and it states that if at any time the province of British Columbia enacts requirements in relation to COVID-19, then the following within this section, 4.3, apply to commercial operators during the period of time that such provincial requirements are in effect. Any commercial operator wishing to use the boat launch must submit a COVID-19 safety plan to the district office, which includes the guide's contact information, emergency contact information, and proof of guiding credentials for all guides. Commercial operators must provide proof of screening of guests for COVID-19 in accordance with the BC Centre for Disease Control guidelines current at the time of screening. The BC COVID-19 self-assessment tool is available and provided within the policy. This was put into the policy originally in consultation with the Secwepemc First Nation. They wanted to ensure that during the original outbreak, wanted to ensure that we were screening in accordance with the provincial guidelines for anyone using the municipal boat launch. So staff are recommending that in order to continue to be able to have the flexibility to adapt, that this section remain in the policy. However, you will notice that there is a recommended motion should council wish to remove it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any questions, comments, queries from council? Councillor Howe?
Okay, so I have a couple of comments as I'd had more time to digest and think on this. So there's a couple of additional points I'd like to bring up for council to consider. So by working into our policy, a public health policy, it gives the administration the option for enforcing public health policy, which then requires more of their time and so on when it's interior health that would normally do this. So that's just that's more time from a very busy schedule that I'm not comfortable with our staff having to take on. But where I was really concerned is that by allowing the administration to choose to enforce public health policies, rather than allowing any talks of enforcement of upholding public health policy to come to the council table for democratic conversation and debate, it takes away a level of conversation that may or may not be necessary or wanted by council. So for example, when this request came to us, we were in the middle of a pandemic and everybody was scared. We didn't know what we were dealing with. Whereas now things have changed considerably, and I'm not sure if Secwepemc, if this is still something super important to them. However, should public health create more mandates or more requests or reenact policies, then I think it would be advantageous to allow for us to, instead of having a default setting for administration to just move ahead with, for us to have the opportunity to have a conversation, maybe even have a consult with Second to see where they are. I mean, right now, really, I think we're all kind of done with it. We're done with the pandemic. We're done with the mandates. We're exhausted. We're scarred. We're traumatized, at least some of us. So it would be good. I think it would be good to just allow for that discussion pre-default.
Councillor Lee?
Yeah, so Councillor Howe makes some good points. And the one thing, after spending the week at Selga, that was discussed amongst the membership, and we've had discussion around it here as well. And I guess I didn't really take it into consideration, is that we're constantly feeling the down pressures of the province putting things on us. And to your point about it being staff hours and administration, to me, this may be something, you know, in a very small manner, we can push back up to the province and say, you know what? You need to come up with a better solution. I don't know if that would be, I don't know how it would look in the office to that, but it's a point that I've been pondering over since last meeting.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Hopple.
So I agree. I'm sick of the pandemic. I'm sick of all the rules and I'm sick of the masks and everything. I think we've all had enough. I think for me, I question if we came into the next wave and if all those restrictions came back, how could we enforce it in all of our other places, like the rec center, like the museum, like the Miyazaki House, like the district office? How could we enforce it in all of our entities, but not this one? Like, I think we have to go straightforward and all of it or none of it. And I can't do none of it, but I can't just pick and choose and say, yeah, okay, that rule now is not going to apply for you guys down there, but over here at the rec center, yeah, it is going to apply. I mean, I don't know how we can do that.
Okay, wait, Ken. Councillor Weed? Good, okay, sorry, Councillor Howe.
I've been thinking on that as well. The municipality, we do have the power to choose. And I do think that those conversations are warranted. And I think that we should have those conversations, and instead of just being like, we need to be in full lockstep with the province and they say this, and so we're gonna do this. I feel like our community is a little bit different. It's not nearly as big. There's other ways to work through this without going back to what had been done. So these are some of the reasons why I'm so it actually causes me stress to think that we're going to work something like this into our policy without allowing for conversation should that time come. Because I think I really hope it's not during our term. I hope we just get some time to just enjoy the last bit of our term. And that this will go to the next term, if at all. But allowing whichever council is at the table at the time to have these open dialogues, because this, I think, is the open dialogues that were lacking in the first place and how we came to where we've been. So I'd really like to just wait and pull this from.
But if I could see, I think you made mention that council or staff gets to choose, we don't. I mean, the public health orders supersede anything that we do. That's why I sort of feel the futility of it. And the point is that when we're given an order, we have to follow the order. It's as simple as that. Or else we're breaking the law.
Is that so? Like, I thought
Yes.
the municipality still had.
I can add a little clarity to that. It's, you can even consider something like the building code. In that the building code is something that's imposed by the province and the responsibility falls on the property owners. It's up to each municipality to decide whether or not it wants to double check that the landowners actually meet the code. But ultimately, the responsibility rests with the province. And if the municipality chooses not to do that double check, it doesn't need to. So in this case, when the orders came down for facilities like the recreation center and municipal hall, those were rules that were actually imposed on those facilities for local governments. We had to, just like businesses, had to follow very specific rules about people entering those spaces. There were as well rules about how campgrounds were operated. The Campground Association in BC helped work with the province and campground operators to fine tune those. What they didn't cover was things like how in a municipality would drive through a campground and go to a boat launch. And that is such a unique situation. There's sort of a gap in policy from the province. And through discussions with Sequosh, because of that gap and the nervousness at the time, it was felt that why don't we double check to make sure these guides, these operators of these guides on the river are actually meeting the provincial guidelines, kind of like the double check that people are doing. But it wasn't a mandate actually given to the province for us to do this specific check. There's nothing given by the province to say we have to make sure that this boat operator has a COVID safety guidelines. Unlike Anorex or municipal hall, where we had no choice. So it was an extra step, an extra double check that the community decided to do, council decided to do, collaboration with Sequosh, and ensure that we're protecting our community at that time. Like as you said, we didn't know what we're dealing with, it was safe. But there was a gap. So the policy that was proposed at the time was let's fill that gap and make sure we're being as safe as we possibly can be. So if in future, after your term, another wave of some horrible COVID strain hits us and the province puts down orders, if there's no order that specifically requires us to do a double check of boat operators, there's actually nothing compelling us to do that unless they explicitly state like they will do the rights interviews. This clause here, 4.3, if left in there, would be triggered by the order and would automatically do those double checks that the province is asking them to. If this clause is removed, staff would bring this back to council at that time and go, do you want to do these double checks for this one specific operation? Probably going to again be a policy capital.
So the municipality will hear
Okay.
us in that decision regarding.
The municipality council has a say whether or not it does the double check, only because it was something optional the council opted to do through the city. Because of the feedback we had, and the relationship we have with the community at a certain time, the policy was created. As you said, it may be worth having a conversation again, should this come back, to see where they're, because that conversation hasn't happened. Because the policies don't exist right now at all. There's policies regarding having a COVID safety plan for campgrounds or procedures and so forth. It's just now the generic communicable diseases.
Okay, so we have two recommendations, one that staff does and another one that's, that council can consider if they want to remove section 4.3. Councillor Weed, any opportunity for you to input?
Well, I'm in favor of having something in place in case, like everybody else I am. For someone who's is on their third week of illness here and has the intelligence in my being to stay home and away from everyone and missing out on things and whatever. But I am very aware that not everybody makes those conscious decisions to take care of the whole community and not just themselves. And I prefer to just go with the staff policy then we have something in place. I'm tired of talking about it. I'm tired of being sick. I'm tired of all these mandates, but I think I would like to support staff to have something in place moving forward in case something else happens.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Weed. What's the pleasure of the rest of council? So I know which recommendation to put on the table.
Well, by that logic, we would screen everybody for any kind of illness, because God forbid we catch something that isn't COVID, that still makes us feel crummy.
Oh, no, this just specifically addresses the section 4.3 or the policy as regard to the vote.
No, I understand that. I understand that.
Yeah.
But to the point,
Okay, while you're thinking, what's your pleasure, Councillor Leach?
I would like to stick with the staff recommendation on this.
Councillor Hoppe?
Me too.
Councillor Howe?
no,
Well, okay, I'm gonna floor that because we got three that are table, not floor.
It's close enough.
Okay, someone please move that we'll leave council policy. No, we don't need a motion. All right. So it's it's not even passed. So council will leave the policy RC02 bracket C as it is. Okay, thank you, folks. Okay, item 9. Does anybody want to withdraw the no new correspondence since April 20th? Work with me, guys, come on.
I thought it's fine.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, item 11. 2021 Statement of Financial Information, Sophie report.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I'll keep it short and sweet. The Statement of Financial Information Report, the Sophie report, for which my dog is named. We have to have council. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of background noise. We have to have council approval to allow the mayor and I to sign the statement of information or statement of financial information that then has to be forwarded on to the province. It contains our audited financial statements, which came to council at the last meeting that were approved, and as well, probably the two most significant statements for council and the public. It also includes the statement of remuneration and expenses. We're required to report on any employee who receives more than $75,000 in remuneration, which is not just wages, that's also taxable benefits, travel and training, things such as that are paid on behalf of an employee. As well, it includes the schedule of suppliers of goods and services. Again, we're required to report fully on any supplier in which we pay more than $25,000 in the year. So you find both those statements in the Sophie report. Staff recommendation, of course, is that council approve the report as presented, and we can send that off to the ministry.
Any questions, comments, queries from council? Someone please move that the District of Lillooet Statement of Financial Information Report for the year ended December 31st, 2021 be approved for submission to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and that the Mayor and Chief Financial Officer be authorized to sign the approval of financial information page. Councillor Hoppe, second Councillor Howe. Any further comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. 11.2, 2021-2022 Municipal Objectives Q1 2022 Progress Report.
Mr. Mayor, you're getting used to this by now, I'm sure. So first quarter report for 2022. Check marks means things are done. There are some things that are nearing completion, but not quite. Definitely there's some items that are falling behind due to a number of items I've mentioned in the report. Pandemics, forest fires, towns being evacuated. It seems to happen here nowadays in BC. But staff are quite proud of what we've been able to accomplish so far. Couple items to mention in Michael. There are some public works items that will actually be brought back for council to consider in June. Interim Director Don Darling was rethought them and done investigations since this was first created. And we may actually, hopefully council will support us in going in a different direction that will get us to where we're wanting to be much more quickly with less money. So we'll see you on some public works items in June. If there's any staff who'd like to speak to items in particular?
I'm sure we've got the corporate development services to be working with the Recreation and Public Works Center on facility maintenance policy that is on the back burner until we do fill the position of manager of recreation for the time being. We're still plugging away on the zoning bylaw, but it has been a fairly significant development season this year, which is good, where we are seeing our numbers are up from the last 2 years. Despite the cost of wood, everyone is still building. Our building inspector is hair straight back. So it's slowing down the process a little bit as we work through some of the permits and variances that are coming in. But we are getting development, so if we're gonna be stalled by anything, it might as well be something good. The subdivision development servicing bylaw is also plugging forward. I should inform council at this point that ISL is no longer on that project. We're going in-house on that. And Don Darling has taken over the project, and we're trying to tailor it a little bit more to the realities of Lillooet rather than just the MMCD provincial guidelines. We're still using that as a jumping off point out of the MMCD, and we talked about this when we did the horse beef subdivision variance. It is designed for the coast where they have significant, not that we don't have water, but they've got significantly more rainfall out there. So we may not require the same ditch and road cross sections designs as are in MMCD. So it's with Don Darling. He is trucking ahead on that. And the street tree program, that's still waiting for the time being. We do have that as I believe in Q4 2022 this year. We'll do our best to get to that. But right now our focus is on our core services for processing applications and permits. Thank you.
Good. Any questions?
Any other staff reps? In your brain?
Okay, here none. Any questions, comments from council? Councillor Hoffman?
Through the mayor, under the rec center, the development of a plan for year-round operation of the Coyote Campground. And then it goes on to say on the other side, in progress but delayed, will be integrated into tourism dependent communities, grant funded capital upgrades plan. I can read close, can't see far away clearly. But I was just wondering, so where are we with, and I don't know if this is a question for the municipal objectives or if it's in the future of this agenda tonight regarding the campground, but we did have $1 million grant. And I'm just wondering where we are on that, or if you'd like me to hold that question until later.
That's something I can answer.
Okay,
In terms of the particular goal here in the objectives.
Right.
Of offering winter camping.
yes,
That is something that working with Suzanne Denbeck and project partner, the market is most likely to be profitable for the district in the near term is through winterized RVs and not little cabins and stuff like you might see in Whistler.
Okay.
The expenses of that are quite significant versus what we get out of them in this community. So his Denbeck's analysis was that the money would be best spent on winterizing water services, the washer and the electrical, so that they can support winterized RVs. And so that's something that will just naturally work into the capital upgrades project. And then it'll be up to council whether or not it wants to trial winter season to see what kind of uptake we get before we dump a ton of money.
Councillor Hop? Any questions? Councillor Leach?
I'm just wondering, under the recreation department as well, the Create a Swimming Pool Business Plan in 2023. I'm just wondering if maybe under the status, if exploring options, because I know there's been a lot of behind the scenes stuff that's been kind of discussing and going on, and I think it would be good to know that it's not being ignored.
Councillor Weed?
Yes, I don't really have any questions. A comment though, I do love the way these reports are laid out, and it makes it a lot simpler for me to know where we are with the projects that we start out with. And I did a few meetings ago bring this up at an SLRD meeting, and hopefully their staff will reach out to our staff to make the way with all the projects that the SLRD has going on in various different areas and communities. It would make life so much simpler if they would just take our CAO spreadsheet and make it easier for us to know where we're at. So I did promote that, and I wanted that to be known out there if somebody reaches out.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Weed. Someone please move that the 2021-2022 municipal objectives Q1 2022 progress report be received for information. Councillor Leach, second. Councillor Weed. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Item 11.3, award of Coyote Campground operation and maintenance agreement.
So there was an operator, Children Property Services, for many, many years, going back to 2013. That company, one-person show. She's been doing a really good job on the campground. We've had nothing but positive feedback from the users of the campground all those years. And when COVID hit and policies came in about the boat launch and all the complications of that, it became a very stressful situation for her. So she approached the district, and as per the terms of her agreement with the district, opted to end the contract at the end of the season. And at that point, it opened up an opportunity from discussion and an ongoing Irish Creek Band that they would like to partner with the district in co-operating that campground. So that was what was agreed to. We signed an agreement with them, 2-year contract for them this year as well. They found, we discovered ourselves as staff, that the amount of labor required to operate the campground was more significant than Patty ever let on. Sure. And so they approached us early this year and used the out clause that they had in the partnership agreement to say that they were not prepared staffing wise or just capacity wise as an organization to take it on another year, especially with still the unknowns of COVID and just the other priorities that they have as a community. So that opened up the opportunity to go again out to public tender. And we offered that up to the public, and we only received 1 applicant. She's recharged after a year off, which she actually got to go camping herself. So she's looking forward to operating the campground again this year. It was just a 1-year term, so that again we can evaluate how things are going. And she wants to do a 2nd year. She wants to do a 2nd year, then that will trigger a public tendering process. We'll have more time for it as well. End of the season, and hopefully have more applicants for this contract. The contract is going to be more if the council opts to do this. There's only one choice really here. It's we go with the contract, it's submitted, or we shut down the campground and spend our time trying to find someone who operating this year. So that the cost increase, the contract cost hasn't increased significantly in years, and maybe John can confirm this, but I don't believe it's gone up for a number of years. It's always been saying $30,000 every year, even though the cost of labor, living, fuel, materials, and so forth has gone up over time. So now that it's kind of been reset, and he has requested that there be greater payment to account for those inflationary costs. And as well, the workload has become very obvious to her. You know, it's fair to have one employee part-time to help out. We saw that last year. Titus Creek Bend stepped up to the plate. We got alternative funding to bring in extra staff to help with the needs of the campground. Just can't sustain over the long term. It takes a lot of work to maintain. So staff are recommending that this contract for an increased price, which will still, though, if the campground season is what it has been pre-COVID, we do expect it to still be in there.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Hochul?
So through the mayor, this, under the financial implications, it states this budget surplus is significantly less than the actual surpluses realized by the campground in the years prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, which averaged about approximately 25,000 in 2018, 25,000 obviously in 2019. But that's kind of written weird. That to me looks like we made 25,000 in both those years. And we're about to pay out 43, but I think that it was more, we brought in about 90,000. Is that correct?
It's the net profit versus gross profit. So we bring in, I think, 90 to 100, but after costs of the contract and all the maintenance and staff time put into the water, electricity, and so forth, what we're left with in profit is about.
Okay,
Hopefully with the rebound of everyone wanting to get out
right.
post-COVID, it will actually have leads fully booked by the chunk of the season. So we do expect high revenues this year. And in addition, we're going to be collecting revenue from boat launches as well. So
Okay.
the mechanism of revenues.
So I just wanted to make it clear that then that 25,000 is not what we brought in, but yet it was a net profit after everything was paid.
That's correct.
Okay. I got lots more questions, so you guys can go ahead.
Councillor Leach?
I'm just curious if, and maybe it's too late for this year, because I noticed that they have posted some summer student positions this afternoon, is what in future years is our campground, even with a contract like this, eligible to apply for summer students?
I don't see why not. It is a municipally owned facility. It's a municipally provided service, whether we contract the operation to Patty or someone else. The additional work that we do through Public Works for the campground, if you like them helping out, that is district's responsibility. So I do apply for it. We only got 2 out of the 4, John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think about 2 out of the 4 summer students funded through the government that we asked for. So the postings are less than even that.
Yeah, I'm just curious for future years, that as we start building the capacity of the campground, to think about another mechanism of getting some more help there. If we're going to be, I mean, we're projecting that we're going to be busy, so just something to think about.
Councillor Howell?
Through the mayor to staff. So from conversation with Councillor Hochul, the net profit is at 25K. Ms. LaPlaca is now asking for, I think it was 42,000, which is up by, if I understand correctly, 20,000.
She's asking 43,000 now, which is $13,000 more than 30,000 they paid every year.
So that's $13,000 less. So our net profit would come down by $13,000. Is that correct?
If all else is equal. But we don't, again, year to year, we don't know what the profit margin is going to be. And rates for the campground, I do believe, were increased recently. the fees and charges bylaw.
Okay, just so I understand, and if I can.
Go ahead.
So and I understand this is tender, and so each applicant has an opportunity to negotiate before or after the fact. I'm not entirely sure, but at 42,000, I'm just curious, because she would have one employee, as she recognizes more staff is necessary. And forgive me, let me know if this is a question I can or cannot ask. So Cayush Band, were they under the impression that they were, like, the amount that was negotiated with them and agreed upon, was it more or less than the 42,000?
It was 30,000.
It was 30,000? So do you think had they known 42, they could have maybe?
The assumption from both parties was that $30,000 was sufficient.
Mhm.
And they and the district discovered through that partnership, because we were far more involved than we ever had been before,
Mhm.
discovered that it isn't realistic to run on $30,000. Even as you see the total cost and what's remaining after we make a gross profit of $90,000 to $100,000. In fact, we're only coming out with $25,000. Means the costs that we're investing in operating these are significant.
Mhm.
And $30,000, that contract rate, is just a portion of the costs. So, but the labor is what we noticed. Cayush Creek Band notices that one person was unable to stay on top of the maintenance to a degree that I think we've all come to expect of the properties, that we
Right.
nicely manicured lawns, because they're just picked up, that things are repaired in this kind of manner. So Cayush Creek Band got federal funding through a work program to bring basically their equivalent of summer students to help out the operating that it shows through. But that $30,000 did not cover the costs of the thing. So what Patty's suggesting is that she actually hired an employee under her company to assist part-time. To assist with those duties through the property, much as Cayush had.
Okay, so it's fairly safe to assume that if the district already knew, based on previous conversations, that an extra employee would be necessary, that was relayed to Cayush, and then they would have then had the opportunity to say, we'd like to ask more because of this new information.
They certainly had that opportunity. They learned as much as we did, how much work.
Oh, okay.
From what I understand, when they informed us of their decision not being involved, it's about the human capacity, the human resources that they have available this year, given what's going on in the community.
Mhm.
They felt that it was better to focus on their other priorities right now. They are very interested in confirming this with them quite bluntly. They're very interested in, again, taking this on in the future when we're ready.
Mhm.
Perhaps after the upgrades of the capital project are done to the campground. The campground itself will be easier to maintain, services break less often, and profitability will have a concession and better sales opportunities on the property, which is another thing that Cayush and us thought was going to happen. Last year's operation, still very subdued through COVID, is that there would be those value adds, the selling of the wood and the toiletries and so forth. Just, it couldn't get off the ground last year. Some of that was just the condition of the facilities itself. So that's what part of the capital project is going to be tackling through the tourism grant and other grants we've gotten since, is having a food concession and having a sundries concession on the property is going to increase the profitability. How we split that with the operators, discussion that makes it more sustainable, financially sustainable.
Thank you.
Councillor Alphonse.
So through there, I like your idea about utilizing a summer student. I think that's a good option for future. But I did want to ask about first the boat launch. Like, I think that's increased a lot of the workload, because now there's a chain that she has to physically let everybody in and out. Is that correct? So if there's like 20 boats in a day, does she have to go down there 40 times and do this chain?
Yes and no. Yes, if it's a day user who drops in, she has to let them out. Again, and they have to arrange ahead of time. So they would call ahead and say, I want to use the boat launch. They would pay their fee, and that fee collected helps offset that cost.
And meanwhile, they're going to be parking there, so she's got to collect that fee as well.
Yes.
Okay.
what they're paying for. So
Paying for it, right? I
Um,
get it.
the regular boat operators will be getting monthly or seasonal passes. So they pay once and they get a combo they can use on the chain so they can take care of it.
Oh, okay, okay,
And that'll be the bulk. It's the regular
right.
commercial.
And my other question is so we did get a grant for $1 million and we were gonna do the bathrooms, but I don't think they've been done as of yet. And I think what you're saying that is perhaps adding to the labor of having all these, you know, rundown bathrooms and water issues. And I think there's picnic table issues and stuff like that. Where is the $1 million? Like, do we hold it? Does Cayush hold it? Who holds it? Does government hold it? And can we spend it?
The money has been transferred from the province to the district. The district holds it, is responsible for it. And I'm happy to tell you all about it later in this meeting, about where it's at, because we're this close to making big hands. I just need council's authorization to do something, make the announcement. So yes, really close. And yeah, some of those things, even infrastructure wise in facilities is like right now, gray water goes mysteriously towards the river. We hope it's okay. And black water goes into a holding tank, which we believe is a septic holding tank that has no septic field attached to it. So a pump truck comes every 4 days that we pay a significant fee to pump that out. When if we spend and actually do a septic fee, we reduce the costs. So these capital upgrades, even just simple operations, could have an effect.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, council? Good. Okay, I need someone to move that the Coyote Creek Campground Operation and Maintenance Agreement for the 2022 camping season be awarded to Gildan Property Services, and that the 5-year financial plan be amended to fund the agreement for a total cost of $43,000, with the $13,000 increase to be funded from the district's accumulated surplus. Councillor Hoffel, second Councillor Howell. Any further comments? Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Move to item 12.1, 2022 tax rate bylaw.
Thank you again through the mayor. So the 2022 tax rate bylaw was given first 3 readings at last council meeting. This is for council to adopt the bylaw, which then again gets forwarded off to the ministry and does form part of our legislative reporting, for the year. And this tax rate bylaw again does include the 3.5% increase in municipal tax revenue. We are recommending that council adopt the bylaw.
Any questions from council? Okay, notice I said questions, not comments.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Someone please move that the tax rates of municipal tax collection bylaw number 2022-009 be adopted. Councillor Howe, second Councillor Leach. Any further comments, questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Item 12.2, the 2022 election bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As brought up at the last meeting, we're presenting for adoption the election dissent voting bylaw number 2022-010. No changes were requested at the last meeting. Just to refresh your memory, the election bylaw as a whole hasn't really changed that much since the 2018 election. The main change is the inclusion of the mail ballot voting, which has also been suggested to be taken out of its own bylaw and incorporated into this bylaw just for ease of use for staff, council, and the public. And with the first 3 readings, I went ahead and ordered all the envelopes because apparently there's an envelope shortage. So just in case we are ready, because the mail ballot voting is open to anyone who wants to request one. So staff are recommending that election dissent voting bylaw number 2022-010 be adopted.
Any questions, comments from council? Okay, Someone please move that election assent voting bylaw number 2022-010 be adopted. Councillor Lee, second Councillor Weave. Any further comment? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried, and thank you. Okay, we'll move to item 14.1. Mayor's report. This one, on April 25th, I was fortunate enough to be able to have a tour with BC Hydro and Sequoia of the bypass for the Seton power situation. So it's a pretty significant project that's going to be happening on the other side of the canal. It's going to be pretty amazing. Trying to get work with Chief Michelle. We meet with BC Hydro and talk to them serious about housing for both the reserve and the District of Lillooet. So we're going to push hard and see where we can go with it anyway. So it's a good tour, and I've got the plans if anybody's interested, just ask me for it. Item 15, Councillor Hoppo.
Okay. So I attended SILGA, Southern Interior Local Government Association in Salmon Arm last week. So to share a few highlights. And, you know, I have to say often what applies to in Northern BC doesn't always apply in Southern BC. And likewise, what is good for cities often does not reflect the need for rural communities. And I think SILGA is a chance to communicate with those Southern municipalities and share those common interests and goals. So first of all, I signed up for a robotic dairy farm tour. And while Lillooet is home to only 2 dairy cows, I wanted to see if dairy cows were an option for local farmers. So due to the flooding in Spence's Bridge, Chris and Melissa Grosler are currently babysitting a dairy cow from Spence's Bridge. So I asked if I could come out and milk it. So I did. And it's a lot of work for an inch of milk in a bucket, let me tell you. The farm I attended in Salmon Arm was very sophisticated. The cows line up to be robotically milked when they want to. So they're just, you know, laying around or moving around, I don't know. And then they decide that they're going to walk over there and they stand in line and they get robotically milked. It's quite amazing. Yeah, they just have free range. They have automatic back scratchers. I'm like, what the heck is that? The big thing that goes around, they go under it and they get their back scratches. I'm like, okay, well, that is definitely not how I thought a dairy farm worked, but clearly it is. So, but what the farmers need is our provincial government to realign the rules around fire evacuations. These farmers have green grass, sparse trees, if any. They cannot move 100 dairy cows in the event of an evacuation. And even if they could, they have no way to milk them when they get to wherever they're going to move them to. So the farmers and cows will stay on their ranch no matter what. But they need the government to recognize their predicament. As the farmers stated, they do not wish to break the law, but the law allows no reasonable solutions. So, you know, it just goes to show you that when they put out laws, whether they go for Southern or Northern or all of BC, it just doesn't always apply. There's always an exception to the rule. Moving on, keynote speaker was Jesse Wendt. He's an author, broadcaster, arts leader, and member of the Serpent River First Nation in Chicago. He mesmerized the audience with the stories and related them to each and every one of us in some form. His first book, Unreconciled Family Truth and Indigenous Resistance, is a national bestseller and was picked as one of 2021 best books by Chapters Indigo, Apple Books, and the Globe and Mail. And that just kind of tells you what a great speaker he is. To make a long story short, his message in the end was simply, if we could all change by 1 degree, whether that was helping a neighbor or just realizing that because we don't see somebody's pain does not mean they don't have it or carry it. Remembering to be kind, and if that is the 1 degree and somebody else changes 1 degree and so on, that the world can start to heal. It was a really powerful story in a very easy way that he put it. I put forth 2 resolutions. One was harsher penalties for repeat offenders. time and again over the course of the week, the resolution was talked about. The resolution was passed. Mayor and councillors spoke of crime, drugs, repeat offenders in their own communities. And I really look forward to bringing this up to UBCM in September, and hopefully this resolution will gain the Premier's attention to the changes that need to be done within our judicial system. The second resolution was better forest management and wildfire protection in BC. This resolution was also brought up a number of times by different mayors and councillors. It was well received and also approved by SOGA. So I'll be speaking to that resolution at UBCM as well. Minister Cullen of Immigration referred to both of the resolutions in his address. So I spoke with him afterwards and he requested that I forward both my resolutions to him as well. In speaking with other mayors and councillors, I developed a list for Mr. Deniker of questions, proposals, etc. So I look forward to meeting him in the near future. And lastly, no hiding for you. Lastly, so September is UBCM in Whistler, which means that many local government officials will be driving through Lillooet to get there. In a hallway conversation between Councillor Leach, Carl Zanin of West Kelowna, and myself, Mr. Zanin suggested that we find a way to make everyone stop in Lillooet. So intriguing idea that Mr. Zanin from West Kelowna had. So people will want to get to Whistler. So we have to think of something that will entice people to drive up the hill to make that stop in Lillooet. So we need to brainstorm some ideas in the next few months, see what we can come up with. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hoppe. Councillor Hoppe.
Okay. First, thank you, Councillor Hoppe. And to your point about how to bring traffic up the hill into Lillooet, that would be a great thing to work with the Chamber of Commerce on.
Right. There you go. Put it in here.
So to report, we all know which meetings I've been at, but just recently, the Chamber of Commerce had their AGM, which was wonderful. I think 60, I think someone people, is that correct on us? Oh, give or take. I think it was a little less attendance. Anyway, some new board members. And it was a wonderful networking event all around. So thank you to the Executive Administrator, Johannes, for putting that together and inviting us. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. Councillor Leach.
All right, so I did get a chance to attend the Chamber BGM. It was very well set up, and I was really pleased with the turnout tonight. Back, it was really nice. And to go through some other stuff first before I get into Silka. The one thing, or a couple of things that are coming up. So tomorrow, May 5th, is the Opioid Crisis Forum. Started its 2-day event. Tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 3:30 at Downton Park. There will be a ceremony and it's an awareness event for what is going on within our community. And I really hope that people will come out to it. And also there will be a panel on Friday at the Rec Center from 8:30 to 5 p.m. So while you're going to the first farmers market on Friday, maybe stop in and see the panel. There's a bunch of people speaking. And the reason I'm stressing this is not only because there is a need for inter-community communication and relationship, about the opioids in the community after Silka, after having a wonderful week away talking to municipalities, figuring out problem solving, and came back to realize that a childhood friend had overdosed. So it's not easy, and the drugs don't they don't discriminate. So although this is something that's being put on by the Lillooet Tribal Council, I really, really hope that more of the Lillooet community will come and be part of it. Anyway, you can just listen. So, one. Right. And then on May 7th, it is also the grand reopening of the East Lillooet Memorial Garden. If you haven't been out there, or can't make the event. It is beautiful. Like just, they've got the planting in, the rock work, the little tiny orange bridge. It's just gorgeous. So that, the public, there's a reception afterwards, which had pre-registered for and purchased tickets. I'm not sure if there's tickets available anymore, but the public part of it at the garden is at 1:30, and Laura has asked I spread the word that residents, if they're coming out, bring a chair. There's limited seating, but they are having a full tour bus from Vancouver of families come up. And on top of it, I believe MP Viss is coming back. He did tour it when he was here a couple of weeks ago and realized the importance of it. So he's just trying to clear his schedule to come back up. Minister Fleming will be here. Regional Board Director Sally Watson, and she also sits on the NDIT board, which was part of the funding for this, will be here. So it's going to be a pretty big to do. And I think it's really good for the community to kind of come out and see the work that's going on. It will bring in, it'll be a destination stop ultimately for tourism and bring people in. So we did that. Silga was very busy, but it was very cool. Two things that I went to go and see BC Social Procurement Initiative, how spending locally help benefit the community and the economic value of it. I won't go into super detail about it, I know we discussed it. But I did want to put it forth to our staff that the BC Social Procurement Initiative, there's a membership for it, and it gives communities or membership, so maybe even businesses, access to policy and to help around how to deal with the social procurement issue and logistics. So one of the speakers, Larry, he actually phoned colleague to get us a quote because it's the cost of membership is based per capita, and for Lillooet to join something like this would only be $350 a year. And according to their studies, return on it for every dollar put in to this type of movement, you get $4.35 back or something like that, and the money stays locally. So you have a sheet on that and some information if anyone is interested. I got to tour the Innovation Center and Zest Food Hub. Super cool. Salmon Arm is the fastest growing tech community in BC, and their makerspace in the basement of the Innovation Hub it's just amazing. They have CNC machines, they have 3D printers. It's phenomenal. And then the shared workspace on the other 2 floors. And then across the city, the Zest Food Hub was paid for through a grant that Agricultural Minister Lana Popham announced. And so there's anchor tenants, rotating tenants, and access to commercial kitchens for small businesses. Just really cool. Again, I have photos and information if anybody wants to see that. On behalf of Councillor Reeve, I did present her emergency management program reform resolution, which got passed as well. Very exciting. And then the only other thing I wanted to announce was that I was nominated off the floor for Director at Large and was voted in the membership. So congratulations. And I'm going to end that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Leach. Councillor Weave.
I have nothing to report other than that I still fit in every pair of pajamas that I moved to Lillooet in, and my husband was a godsend. So that's it for me. I haven't been anywhere, haven't done much, not even Zoom meetings until today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weave. Keep well, rest. We hope that you recover very quickly. Okay, we'll move to item 16.1. Mr. Denninger.
You heard from me just a couple of weeks ago Unless there's any questions.
So, that's good. Any questions from? Okay, we'll move on to item 18.1. The meeting is open to questions from media and the public.
Why not you?
Come on. Okay, thank you. We're gonna move to closed session 19.1. Will somebody please move that the meeting of the District of Little Rock Council be closed to the public pursuant to the Community Charter Provision, Section 91E, the acquisition, disposition, and expropriation of land or improvements that the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. Moves. Councillor Huffle, second Councillor Howe. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Thank you for attending. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Feel free to take a donut with you.
Come on, guys.